Hello, fam. This is Dr. Ade coming to you in the spirit of Imhotep, who said 5,000 years ago, said, "Student, first know thyself. Then knowledge of God and the universe will be available to you." I'm happy to be with you again. It's been a while since I did another channel, another video. So now we will be continuing. And this is part 2 with the title, African Prophesied, the 400-year curse. Caucasian's time is definitely up, y'all. Now I'm just going to remind everyone that this is an Afrocentric channel. It is also a channel that is very much Pan-African and designed to present information, knowledge, and issues from an African perspective. So I'm sorry if it offends anyone. If it offends you, then please, the channel is not for you. Go to another channel. As I said, this is part 2 of the video entitled Africans Prophesied the 400-year curse. Caucasian's time is up. What am I talking about? I'm talking about passages in the Bible that speak of Africans being enslaved for 400 years in a land that is not their own, and how we would be terribly abused for 400 years. And by the time the 400 years are up, God expected these strange people that came into Africa and captured us and brought us into this strange land, that they would have repented. Well, they have not. They have not repented. They have not repaired. And we are asking for reparations. Instead of repenting, they have tripled down on their abuse. And since we have no weapons to fight against them, God has stepped in to take over. And that's what's going on. Now, if that offends someone, like I said, go to another channel. The inspiration that I use, the inspiration I'm using for this video is "My people perish for lack of knowledge." And this passage is taken from the Bible, Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. Here is the purpose for this particular video. I'm going to discuss 3 things. First, I'm going to discuss the connection between African culture, African spirituality, and African power. Second, I'm going to present information about the spiritual development and powers of Imhotep, the high priest and prophet of ancient Egypt, and the originator of the slavery narratives and the curse referred to in Genesis chapter 15, verse 13. And the verse reads, "Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. The third thing I am going to discuss is the ramification, or ramifications in the plural, of African spirituality and magic. Now, the reason I'm going to discuss the ramifications of African spirituality and magic is because African people, African Americans, are always talking about magic, but have no idea as to what magic is. So I'm going to share a little understanding about the reality of African spiritual power that translates into magic. In fact, it is magic. So I have 6 points. Number 1, African spiritual power is a natural endowment. If you are African, you have African spiritual power. 2, African spiritual power manifests itself on the physical plane of human reality. 3, all spiritual forces have power over physical objects. If you have anything that is physical, spiritual force has power over it. Anything with a name, spiritual force and magic have power over anything that has a name. Okay. Number 4, the divine higher forces that we call deities, Loas, angels, orishas. These are the immortals. They are purely spiritual entities that are guided and limited and controlled by positive moral dictates within the immutable laws of the universe. Immutable means they don't change. The unchanging and unchangeable laws of the universe. Number 5, African living human beings and ancestors possess levels and types of spiritual powers that are reserved only for Africans and are accessible at the highest levels only to them. Now remember, I said at the highest levels. They are only accessible to Africans. Moving right along. Number 6, race mixing reduces the spiritual DNA and the spiritual power of African offspring. Let's go on. I'm giving everyone a reminder. For some people, I'm giving you a heads up. Some people have never been taught this. They've never been taught that human beings are spirits. Spirits encapsulated in physical flesh. And we are spirits encapsulated in physical flesh because that is what's necessary for us to exist, and not only exist in this third dimensional reality of planet Earth, but also necessary for us as human beings with souls, and souls that have divine missions, divine destinies. It is important for us to be encapsulated in physical flesh so that we can learn the lessons that the higher forces send us here to learn. So human beings are spirits that are encapsulated within physical flesh. The human spirit is a finite, a small part of God's universal divine spirit that never dies. And this is why in all of the traditional religions, I probably should say all the religions, they all speak of everlasting life. You see, African people are the original human beings created in God's spiritual image. Spiritual image because Almighty God is not encapsulated in flesh. God is purely spiritual and pure intellect, all mind, M-I-N-D. So Africans are the original human beings who were created in God's spiritual image with the greatest spiritual and physiological capacity than all the other human groups. How can I say that? Because as the original human beings that God created on earth and sent out to populate the entire earth, we gave birth to every human being on this earth. Science has proven that. A lot of people have a problem integrating science with spirituality. I don't know why. Use your imagination. Get out of that tight little box. Spirituality and science work hand in hand. But let me go on. African spirituality can be further enhanced by drawing extra power, extra knowledge, and guidance from universal divine spirit and from the divine deities, the immortals themselves, as well as from our bloodline ancestors. I'm moving on to talk about the components of African spiritual power. First of all, we have to start discussing spiritual and moral development that are earned and accumulated from several past lives. Yes, I said several past lives. Am I talking about reincarnation? The answer is yes. Second, the deities, the spirits, the immortals choose a human soul to guide and to guard throughout a lifetime. And this happens before even conception. Third, divine destiny of the soul. I'm talking about a human being's soul. It is selected and prescribed before conception in the womb. So all of this is happening before your mother even conceives of you in her belly. So a soul gets to be chosen by the spirits, by the deities. They choose us. So that soul is chosen and given birth into priesthood. If you are chosen by the spirits, to be chosen means that you are chosen to be born into priesthood. That's what it means. So moving on, this is why you have people who are highly spiritual who go into priesthood. They say they heard the call. They received the call. So you receive the call to priestly initiation. It can be one or more. And that call and that initiation experience earns you the spiritual title of human God on earth. Now, I'm sure some of you have never heard of this. Many of you have read in the Bible where it says that we are meant to be gods on earth. This is why Jesus said, "Greater things shall you do than you see me doing." But no one is taking the time to explain to you exactly what this means. Now, in the traditional African vernacular and experience, you are called a human God on earth because you now contain powers of the deities. You are lifted spiritual above an ordinary human being. So moving along, there is this ongoing connection after initiation. An ongoing connection with and growth support from the deities, from the spirits, from the immortals themselves for your entire life. They support you and guide you and protect you your entire lifetime. Moral and spiritual tests, moral and spiritual challenges have to be successfully passed during your lifetime as you elevate spiritually, as you grow spiritually, as you develop more and more spiritual strength. You have to go through these moral and spiritual tests until finally and hopefully you reach the end of your divine destiny, having fulfilled it. Fulfillment of one's divine destiny at the end of this life. That is the goal. I've shown you figures of Imhotep the polymath before. And remember, a polymath is someone who is a multi-genius. And in world history, we have only had one. The African high priest who was also a prophet, a physician, a pharmacist, an architect, a teacher, and a scribe. These are some images done 5,000 years ago to commemorate the great Imhotep. He was a high priest, a prophet, a physicist, a pharmacist, an architect, a teacher, a scribe, and he excelled in every one of those fields. This is why people in the ancient world considered Imhotep as a god on earth. That's because he was one. Someone with powers far beyond the average human being. But that whole notion of a human being becoming a human god on earth is something that was expected before ancient Egypt, thousands of years before, and continues to exist thousands of years after. We still have it. How did Imhotep, how did he do it? How did he develop all of this spiritual power? I'm going to tell you. Through initiations. But before he began his earthly initiations, he had gone through all of those steps that I outlined already. He was chosen by the spirits. He was given his divine destiny, the things that he was to accomplish on earth, before he was even conceived. Now, he had gone through so many lifetimes that he had already acquired so much high knowledge, so much power, that during his last lifetime, he became an actual god on earth. What were these initiations? First, he was initiated to Ptah. Ptah is the creator deity of nature, flora and fauna, fertility, carpenters, shipbuilders, craftsmanship, metalworking, and sculpture. Imhotep was referred to as the son of Ptah. He was also initiated to Nefertim, the deity of healing, perfumes, and beautification. He was initiated to Ma'at, deity of universal balance, cosmic order, harmony, truth, justice, character, morality, and ethical behavior. And all of Ma'at's characteristics are associated with religion and the afterlife. And finally, he was initiated to Jehuti. Some called him Tehuti. But this deity's most revered name is Thoth, T-H-O-T-H. Thoth, the deity of writing, knowledge, wisdom, magic, and the moon. Thoth is also the controller of universal order and chaos, physical and moral laws, rational and eternal ideals. These are the secrets behind Imhotep's extraordinary powers. And those with ears will hear me. First of all, Imhotep was born into priesthood. His divine destiny was guided by that fact. However, his development as a powerful high priest was the result of being initiated to these four very different, powerful immortals, these deities. Ptah, Nefertim, Ma'at, and Thoth, each of them selected him for initiation based upon the knowledge, the moral and the spiritual development, and the intellectual gifts that Imhotep had acquired in past lifetimes. So these deities needed to give Imhotep of themselves what he needed in order to carry out the jobs that they gave him. Imhotep accomplished so much higher spiritual knowledge in his past human manifestations that his soul had finally reached a level of human godhood. Therefore, Imhotep was chosen by the deities, the spirits, to be born again on earth to help give humanity and human civilization a great leap forward. What am I saying? In terms of spirituality, in order to reach the highest levels, if you are not chosen by the deities, the spirits, the immortals, you cannot choose them. First, they choose you to do something. Next, you receive your divine destiny at birth, and then you are called into priesthood at some time in your life. The next step is to be initiated to the deity that chose you for the mission. Once that happens, you are then considered a human god on earth because you contain the powers of the deity. From that point on, you are guided and guarded by that deity, by other spirits, and by the ancestors. Imhotep was born into what was already the first cradle of civilization that had been developed throughout Africa. When it came to the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, and the Sudanese were senior to the Egyptians. And both of those ethnic groups taught the Egyptians. The Egyptians simply developed it into their particular into their ethnic expression. Egypt was not alone in doing all of these marvelous things. Egypt, the Egyptians were taught. First of all, before Imhotep was even conceived in the womb, he was destined to accomplish great things for the good of humanity and for human civilization. His natural gifts, his talents and knowledge were greatly expanded and translated into spiritual powers as a result of many years, I should say a lifetime of study, training, and priestly initiations. In other words, Imhotep put in the necessary work. It is important to point out that no one knows how many lifetimes Imhotep must have lived before his last manifestation. Here is an image of Jehuti. Thoth. I call him the Revelator. I'm calling him the Revelator and the deity. The source of that 400-year slave prophecy. It was Thoth, the God of wisdom, knowledge, and spiritual magic. Remember I said spirit is magic and magic is spirit? Here we are. The ancient Egyptians said of the deity Thoth that he is the deity whose guidance has always been perfect. It was Jehuti, Thoth, who related to Imhotep some amazing revelations about a coming catastrophe to befall Egypt. At that time, Egypt was called Kemet. And Thoth revealed that all African people and the general physical condition of the entire world, that we would be at a crisis point all over the world. And he gave that revelation 5,000 years ago to Imhotep. If you read the ancient manuscript online, and I've got it below, you will learn that Imhotep had acquired such a high degree of spiritual power and knowledge as a human god on earth that the deity Thoth would visit him on a regular basis to teach Imhotep personally. And he always insisted on having at least 2 witnesses present. And Imhotep was instructed to always record in writing exactly what was taking place and what they were being taught. And you can read it for yourself in the translation of the ancient manuscript. So when we read about this encounter that Imhotep had on an ongoing basis, actually, with the deity Thoth, you will understand what can happen to human beings who are really fundamentally spirit encapsulated in human flesh, who reach the level of human godhood. This is what can happen. Here is the information. Here is the hyperlink so that you can go to the internet and read the manuscript for yourself. Now, the part that really concerns African people in total is part 9 of the manuscript. But you can read the entire thing. And it was found along with those ancient scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls. And now it is coming out. We have the historical evidence of Imhotep's 5000 BCE manuscript. Now the names, don't get confused by the names. I've added a note here of how Greek translators later associated Imhotep with Asclepius, the Greco-Roman god of medicine, healing, truth, and prophecy. Caucasian translators have always followed this tradition of changing the names of important people, heroes, sheroes, prophets, and the like. They changed them to Greek names. They changed them to Caucasian names. And this is the way in which they discredit African genius and African contributions. It's the way that it's exemplary of how they have written African people out of history and stolen our history and put themselves there. Here is another image of Imhotep in his priestly garb, this powerful Egyptian high priest and prophet. He was known as the most powerful high priest throughout the ancient world during and for thousands of years after his lifetime. Throughout human history, no other single human being even comes close to Imhotep's intellectual and spiritual abilities. Imhotep became what is referred to as a human god on earth. I've explained how he did it. But now the question is, can we become spiritual masters like the ancient Africans? Can we do that? Can we return to the level of positive, creative genius for the benefit of humanity? The answer is yes. Yes, if we have been chosen by the deities, the spirits, the immortals, and if we have the moral fiber, and if we have the diligence to fulfill many successive destinies in several lifetimes, as we incarnate lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. I'm moving on. So now we are talking about the deities, the spirits, the human divine destiny, priesthood, magical powers. Now everyone is not destined into priesthood. It's the same as saying everyone does not come from a royal family. If everyone came from a royal family, then there would be no one to rule. That doesn't make sense. Everyone did not come from royal families. The royal family is decided when a particular family, the head of a particular family, and it can be male or female, man or woman, when that person sets out, leaves a particular area, a particular village, ventures out with a group of people, a group of supporters who are ready to go with this male or female leader, and they found or create a new settlement. And that new settlement becomes a new village. The village turns into a town and this and that until finally they have an empire. Whoever is a member of that founding leadership family, those people are the royals. Another group of royals come from among the priesthood. Whoever sits on the king's or the king's council, they also become royalty. So I'm explaining who the royals are and how you get to be a royal. You can't just jump up and say, oh, I'm a royal. It doesn't come that way. It comes because you are a member of a family that created a brand new kingdom. Okay, let me get back to this point. Because now we are talking about magic and spiritual power. And I'm placing it within the context of where we are now as a people. And I'm pointing out our weakness, or weaknesses in the plural. We have lost power for several reasons. Africans have lost power because we have lost knowledge that we are spirits who draw power from magical energy of the universe, and we generate that power. We have lost power because we choose to operate. We choose to operate in weaker, non-African spheres of spirituality. It's our choice. So we weaken ourselves voluntarily. We have lost power as African people by becoming miseducated and misinformed, and I'm going to add one more, and uncaring about what magic is. And all the time, others are using it against us with evil spells. So we are under their spell. We are plugged into their matrix, thinking that their matrix is reality, and the only reality that we can deal with. And all they can offer is an illusion. Finally, Africans have lost power because we have not been taught. We've not been taught that the entire universe is imbued with and blessed with magic. So, what gives us these magical powers? At the highest level, we have the deities and spirits working with the divine destinies of several chosen souls who then get born into priesthood and are enhanced with the magical powers of the divine forces. Let me add, everyone does not need to be a priest. It is not necessary for us to get out of the mess that we are in. What needs to happen is to have a critical mass of people in one accord. In one accord of what? African spiritual consciousness. We have the priesthood in place. But if the people are running around like chickens with no heads, no matter what the priesthood does, the people themselves are pulling against the priesthood. That's where we are. And that's why we are suffering so much, and why we have lost the power that God gave us. Let's look at some historical facts of African spiritual power and magic. I've made this illustration here. 360 degrees, that's 360 degrees of every circle. And those 360 degrees apply to African spiritual knowledge and power within African culture, within African traditions, within African beliefs, religious beliefs. Every culture has its own 360 degrees of spiritual knowledge and power. But guess what? Africans have the highest level. I've already explained why and how. Because we are the original people. And the ones we had to reach back and teach do not have as much. So consider that as this discussion goes forth. Now, I've drawn two angles here. I've drawn a 33-degree angle and a 90-degree angle. Why have I drawn a 33-degree angle? Because that is the Freemasons' level of African knowledge and power. Freemasons are well known for aspiring to a level of 33 degrees of what? Initiation. However, almost no one stops to analyze, what does that mean? It means that they put in years of work to attain 33 degrees of African knowledge. This knowledge was formulated by African people thousands of years before Caucasians even existed on this earth. If you go back 40 to 45,000 years, you cannot find a Caucasian. They only emerged as human beings from the region of the Caucasus Mountains, as I said, about 40 to 45,000 years ago. Don't believe me. Google it. You Google all this foolishness. Caucasians are part African, and watch out, they are part Neanderthal. As a professor in Africana studies, I have been teaching that one thing for more than 20 years. And black folks have criticized me for doing it. But now that white folks have done this worldwide DNA study, and they have come out with it, now they have told the truth. They are part Neanderthal. They have Neanderthal genes. Their appearance alone is like the Neanderthal. And it's due to over 1,000 years of being trapped behind glaciers during the Ice Age. So you have these tropical Africans being trapped during the Ice Age, and the very things that maximized survival in the tropics had to be lost, had to be gotten rid of in their bodies during that Ice Age. The extremely cold Arctic climate stripped Caucasians of practically every life-sustaining human physiological attribute. Added to this is the fact that they had crossbred for more than 1,000 years. They crossbred all that time with their Neanderthal neighbors who did what? Neanderthals never became human up to the time that they became extinct. Africans on the continent do not carry Neanderthal genes. And see, all this while, we have never known who we are really dealing with. You think they are human beings like everybody else. Do they act like human beings? Since the time they came into existence hating the rest of humanity for no reason. No one else acts like that. Let me go on. So Africans on the continent whose parents have never race mixed do not have Neanderthal genes. Some African Americans probably carry Neanderthal genes because you know what was forced on us. And some of us are just anxious to be, we are just anxious to have children by these half Neanderthals. I don't know why, but let me go on. Neanderthals became extinct, but it is well known by genetic scientists all over the world that Caucasians carry Neanderthal genes due to crossbreeding with them. And it is speculated that this may be the reason Caucasians themselves are now becoming extinct. How many of you knew that? At this particular time, Caucasians have a 0.7% birth rate worldwide, and this trend cannot be reversed. Now, these were the statistics before COVID-19. And it doesn't just apply to America. It applies to the whole Western world. Caucasians are dying out, and it is irreversible. So in 3 or 4 generations from now, it will be hard to find a Caucasian. Now, just as a side note, this is something extremely important for you to know. The virologist. A virologist is a scientist who is an expert in viruses. About 1 month ago, they came out with a report. Just recently, they have traced the COVID-19 virus directly back to Neanderthals. And this means that Caucasians not only carry Neanderthal genes, they've also carried over this particular disease that is killing people all over the world. Killing people except the Africans on the continent who have never been mixed. Now we can understand why Africans on the continent were not getting the virus until whites brought it in. And it's the reason why Africans on the continent are not dying from it like African Americans who may be mixed with what? Lord, have mercy. Caucasian genes somewhere down the line. When I say Caucasian genes, I really should say Neanderthal genes. Somewhere down the line. Africans in ancient times always considered Caucasians as barbarians. So how did these barbarians somehow acquire African knowledge? We can trace it historically. It began with the Greeks in the 5th century. You can read about it. It is common knowledge. A handful of Greeks were allowed to enroll in the Egyptian mystery schools to learn a limited amount of African knowledge. They needed it because they were barbarians. So out of 360 degrees of African knowledge, Caucasians, once they were taught a little something in the Egyptian mystery schools, they could lay claim to only 33 degrees. As a matter of fact, I'm telling you what I know. 33 degrees of African knowledge and spirituality, that's all a Caucasian can handle. Because African knowledge and spirituality carries this strong spiritual component that will burn out a Caucasian's physiological system. The levels of energy are just too high for them. Our African ancestors used their knowledge to build human civilization and to uplift humanity. However, Caucasians, with their wicked, greedy, and violent nature, led them to use the spiritual knowledge for evil. However, my African brothers and sisters and children, their time is up on this earth. And that's the fact that is driving them insane. And it has been prophesied that in these days in which we are living right now, they will become so angry and desperate because they know that their time is up and they are dying out. They will try to kill off African people and other people of color on this earth. But God has this earth, has the world, has the universe in his strong right hand. This is why they are so crazy. But it has been prophesied that the more they arbitrarily kill us, the more they will be killed, and the faster they will die, often at the hands of their own people. I know about the prophecy, and I am seeing it unfold every day. And I'm saying to Almighty God, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. Think about this. If Caucasians could take control of the world for thousands of years with only 33 degrees of African knowledge, you see how much 33 degrees of knowledge is, right? In the diagram, you see that angle. If they could do what they have done for thousands of years with only 33 degrees, what could we Africans do for ourselves and for the rest of the world and for the earth if we got back to using just 90 degrees of our own spiritual knowledge and power. With just 90 out of 360 degrees. That's what we should be thinking about, instead of limiting ourselves to thinking inside this stupid, funky Caucasian box. Throw that damn box away and let African consciousness and genius guide us through the blessings of the higher forces. Let's wake up and save ourselves, save humanity, and save this planet like God created us to do. African people are God's chosen people. But in order to get back to ourselves, we've got to wake up. Now I'm moving on to talk about magic itself. Magic is life itself throughout the universe. The human spirit is part and parcel of universal spirit, which is imbued with life, energy, and magic. Therefore, life is magic and magic is life. They are inseparable. No one knows where life comes from. And when life leaves an entity, whether it is a human being or a flower, no one knows where it goes. Universal magic allows the brain, the heart, the lungs, the intestines, and the bloodstream, all the organs, they work involuntarily. We don't have to think about it. They're just working. Magic is a blessing from God, a blessing from the universe. Magic can only be evil when it is used by evil people to do evil work. So people have spooked us and kept us enslaved by spooking us. Oh, African this and that, that's black magic and that's voodoo and okay. Keep following these Caucasians if you want. See what's going to happen. That's why we are in this condition. Let's talk about African spiritual power. As Africans, we keep trying in vain to change Caucasians, when we should be spending time trying to change ourselves into dynamos of positive, magical energy. We spend all our lives, for more than 100 years, 200 years, we have spent our lives giving our energy up to them, talking about them, what they have done to us, for us, about us, instead of studying ourselves and changing ourselves back to what we're supposed to be. Praying that God will help us to change Caucasians. We haven't changed ourselves. God will never do for us what we refuse to do for ourselves. For more than 200 years, we've been trying to change them. Change their hearts and minds through the beauty of our character. Give me a break. The secret lies in Africans changing ourselves. When we change ourselves, everything else automatically changes. History up to now demonstrates that as a collective, we African people are only using about 5 to 8% of our own African spiritual knowledge and power. That's all. This is on a global level, not just here in America. Globally, we have assimilated into another group's spiritual matrix, and they don't have access. No, I said that wrong. We've assimilated into another group's spiritual matrix, and they don't give us access to their 360 degrees of spiritual knowledge. But the truth is that their 360 degrees of spiritual knowledge is not equal to the African. They are the weakest expression of humanity on earth. So how could their level of spiritual knowledge be that high? It cannot. It is not. It is low not only because they don't have that much knowledge, but the other reason is because they are wicked. They are evil. So their spirituality goes below the baseline instead of aspiring into the higher spiritual forces. They go below the baseline, and all they deal in is the dark forces. The African collective as a critical mass hasn't been able to get anything done for ourselves because we don't have the mentality or the spiritual power to get it done. Most of our thinking and all our strategizing are formulated within the Caucasian matrix. Therefore, it's impossible to defeat the enemy using the enemy's strategies. Why do you keep appealing to the slave master? The slave master is not going to liberate you. Why would he? Our enslavement means money in his pocket. So why would he turn us loose? I don't want to get too far off the point. It's impossible to defeat the slave master using the slave master's strategies. The slave master taught us those strategies because he knew that they wouldn't work. So we are like the stupid goat. You know, we've seen pictures of the goat with his stupid self pulling a cart with a carrot hanging in front of it off a stick. And we, just like goats, are just running after that carrot. 200 years of goat activity. Another way of putting this is to say we are in the white folks' box of possibilities. And they set the bar very low. This means that we are mentally, physically, and spiritually handicapped, wrapped up in shrink wrap from head to foot within a sealed plexiglass box and drugged up high on Caucasian psychedelic rhetoric about America and freedom and liberty and values, giving us this false illusion that we are doing something significant toward real freedom and real liberation. In other words, we are under a spell, a magical spell that has no semblance of reality. So while our enemies have conquered the world with only 33 degrees, a small percentage of African spiritual knowledge and power, using it against us, we continue to drink the Caucasian Kool-Aid. As willing slaves, we continue to believe that our own African spiritual knowledge and power are evil. We must be out of our minds. Black folks need not think that God is going to fix this when we refuse to fix whatever we can for ourselves. God gave Africans access to 360 degrees of the highest knowledge and power on earth. If we are too stupid to use it, oh well, that's our problem. But how do you think our African ancestors were able to develop civilization all over Africa when the rest of humanity were mired in barbarity? Have you asked yourself that? How were the ancestors able to make technological advances? How did they come up with the theories, the principles, and practices of chemistry, medicine, mathematics, physics, astronomy, philosophy, religion, engineering, biology, geography, and the arts? And there are even more, but I'm just going to stop here. How did they do it? And they did all these things while the other groups were still mired in barbarity, especially those up in those Caucasus mountains, those half Neanderthals. And we have these fools who walk around talking about, I ain't no African. So, you know what? I agree with you. In terms of spirituality and knowledge and civilization, you certainly are not an African. You are a lost soul in the realm of Caucasiandom. I don't know if that's a word, but I just made it up. No one knows if you will ever come to yourself. But before I leave this topic, let me ask this question. What could Africans worldwide do to uplift ourselves and the rest of humanity if a critical mass of us went back in the spirit of Sankofa? If we went back and reclaimed just 90% of African knowledge and power that we used to have. Believe me, Jesus ain't going to provide it. Jesus cannot give anyone what he never had himself. African decline worldwide is the result of assimilation into Caucasian and other anti-African cultural mixes. Just name a group that hates us. That's where black folks want to identify themselves. So we've had a decline from spiritual worldview. From the African spiritual worldview to the Caucasian material worldview. Do you know that every culture and every religion on earth has a spiritual worldview? Every traditional religion, every traditional culture has a spiritual worldview, except the Western world. It sticks out like a sore thumb. It's the only one with a material worldview, but we Africans have bought into it hook, line, and sinker. We have a decline from seeing Almighty God as an internal human force to seeing God as some outside heavenly force. God is inside every human being as a spiritual force, as a magical force. So anybody that's praying to some God up in the sky, keep going that way. See what happens. We have a decline from empowerment by the higher forces and personal higher spiritual knowledge. We've declined from there. Now we have disempowerment by alien anti-African religious, educational, and cultural teachings. Black folks in America don't even want their children taught by an African teacher. If the teacher ain't white, the teacher can't be qualified. What fools. We have a failure to realistically analyze the toxic historical relationships that we have worldwide with non-Africans. We gave all of them life. We gave every one of them the gift of civilization and raised them up from barbarity. But today, all of them hate us. And we even hate ourselves. What fools we are. I mentioned the spirit of Sankofa. We have these images of the Sankofa bird. And the Sankofa bird holds significant meaning all over Africa. You can find the design expressed in so many ways, such as artwork and carvings and even fabrics. The symbol is verbally expressed as a proverb. The proverb says, "Return and fetch it." It's a part of, or it expresses African wisdom. Return and fetch it. Go back. Stop, turn around, go back, and retrieve that valuable thing that you left behind. Each variation of the symbol carries an additional level of meaning. For example, sometimes the bird is portrayed in flight with her head turned backwards. That means the bird is in the process of moving forward, but it won't be possible until she turns back to pick up something of value left behind. If she carries an egg in her mouth while she is on the wing, the interpretation is even higher. She has not only turned back, she has actually retrieved the item, and that item will now bring something important into existence. That egg represents new life of something getting birthed into our reality, something great. So the thing that we must go back and retrieve is our traditional African culture, our spiritual knowledge, our traditions, and our high level of spirituality. so that we will have the magical energy to set off a new reality that no one can fight against. I'm saying that our main way forward is to first go back. Well, fam, we've come to the end of this particular video. And I'd like to leave you with a few words about this ancient manuscript. The manuscript contains an ancient legend and prophecy. It speaks of Imhotep receiving a divine prophecy about strange-looking men from a faraway land who would come and devastate the African continent. The manuscript foretells what came to be known as the African slave trade, the thing, the horror, the ma'afa, that we have lived through for more than 400 years. The manuscript foretells what came to be known as this slave trade and all the horrors of enslaved Africans' 400-year bondage in a strange land. They are all laid out in this 5,000-year-old document. God promised to punish the foreign enslavers with a curse of retributive justice if they failed to repent for their sin of African slavery. They are also expected to repair the harm done to us for more than 400 years. Once the 400-year deadline is passed, and it has passed, God's retributive justice is destined to occur in the form of natural disasters, fires, floods, blizzards, and plagues. The destruction is promised to be so widespread that it will damage the general condition of the entire world system. Is that not where we are today? No matter what you might believe or not believe, I remind you that beliefs are not facts. This manuscript presents itself from our African ancestry from 5,000 years ago. Words spoken by one of the higher deities, by an immortal himself. 5,000 years ago. This is physical evidence that has been recorded and verified over the centuries by historians and scholars. Everyone in the ancient world knew it and knew about it. It's so ancient that it was recorded more than 1,000 years before the Hebrews came into knowledge of it. So the Hebrews, more than 1,000 years later, recorded it in Judaism. It is there in the Torah. 1,000 years later, Christianity recorded it in the Bible. A century after that or so, Islam recorded it in their Torah. In their Quran. What cannot be denied is the fact that the natural calamities occurring in Western nations are mentioned in the manuscript. and we were written out of the history of this event. You see the trick? The Hebrews learned about it from Moses, who grew up in the Pharaoh's palace, who was initiated in the mystery schools of Egypt. He had to be initiated because he was royalty. He had to be. That's where he learned about it. And when he left Egypt, that's when it got into the Hebrew religious history. It doesn't apply to them, it applies to us. And the deity says so in the manuscript. So what cannot be overlooked is the fact of worldwide pandemic and economic decline as detailed in the manuscript from 5,000 years ago. An African proverb says, talk to them. If they do not listen, let adversity teach them. Well, it is my responsibility to talk to you and give you the information. What you do with the information is your business. So I finally finished part 2 of this particular video. And I hope you will forgive my voice quality. I have allergies. And you know that the air quality is so low now that practically everyone is sick. So sometimes you will hear me clear my throat. Sometimes I have to stop the tape and have a sip of tea or something. This is our new reality. I would like to say to you, family, that now that I have laid down certain teachings through these PowerPoint presentations, from now on I'm going to have personal presentations. So you will see my face, we will be talking, and all of that. But I wanted to lay down this wisdom first. It was important to me that you would be able to hear my voice, to see the words, and if you want to write something down, you can stop the video, you can pause it, backtrack, write down the information you need to research, and then start it all over again. So this is the last video where I'm just doing a PowerPoint presentation. From now on, you will see me face to face. And I thank you very much. Remember the words of Imhotep, family? First know yourself, and then knowledge of God and the universe will be available to you. Please hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons. And remember, I am coming to you in the spirit of Sankofa. That is my little business logo. And the motto is this: retrieving, reclaiming, restoring, and revalidating what has been lost. Knowledge has been lost. And that is why our people are perishing. I'm going to leave you with some other words, another quotation. It is Lao Tzu Tao Te Ching who said this: knowing others is intelligence. Knowing yourself is true wisdom. Mastering others is strength. But family, hear me well. Mastering yourself is true power. And I will say amen and ashe to that. Until next time, this is Dr. Adetokunbo Knowles Borishade saying take care. Take care, family, and I love you all. Bye-bye.